Daniel woke up the next morning with a quiet determination. The heavy weight of losing his job still pressed on his chest, but for the first time, he felt a spark of hope. Claire had been right. He had knowledge, skills, and courage. He just needed a way to start. He began by examining what he knew best, the supply company world. Years of experience, of learning how orders moved, how clients thought, how deliveries were managed, suddenly felt like a treasure map. He realized that even without a company, he could still provide value. But where to start? He took a deep breath and wrote down a list of contacts he had kept over the years, old clients, colleagues, and vendors. Most of them would probably ignore him, but Daniel believed that even one small connection could open a door. He smiled as he remembered Claire giving him the box of her jewelry. The thought of selling it made him nervous, but he knew it was their chance to build something small but real. The first day was hard. Daniel and Claire sat together at the small kitchen table. He carefully listed his services and drafted a short message to his contacts. His hands trembled as he typed each email, wondering if anyone would respond. When he finally pressed send, he felt a mix of relief and fear. This was the first real step. He had taken action. Hours passed, and there was nothing. Daniel felt doubt creeping in. Maybe this was a mistake, he whispered to himself. But Claire squeezed his hand and said, "You've already started. That's more than most people ever do." Her words were like sunlight breaking through clouds. Daniel nodded and decided he would not sit still. He would make calls. One by one, he dialed his old clients, introducing himself with a careful, calm voice. Some people hung up. Some laughed at him. Some said, "We don't need you anymore." Each rejection stung, but Daniel reminded himself, small steps, small steps. One client listened, cautiously interested. Daniel explained how he could deliver quickly, handle their orders with care, and provide the personal attention that big companies no longer offered. That client gave him a small assignment, just a few boxes, but it was a start. That first job felt monumental. Daniel and Claire worked together to fulfill it perfectly. They packed the boxes carefully, checked each detail twice, and delivered them themselves. The client was surprised by their attention to detail and praised them. Daniel felt a warm glow of pride. This small success gave him courage. He realized that even a tiny opportunity could grow into something bigger if he treated it seriously. The next few days were a mix of hope and struggle. Daniel made calls, sent emails, and followed up with clients. Some days were discouraging. The phone stayed silent, and he questioned himself again. But he kept remembering Claire's words and the look of encouragement in her eyes. Together, they brainstormed, organized their little kitchen office, and learned to celebrate even the smallest wins. Daniel also took small steps to improve his knowledge. He watched tutorials online about managing a business, keeping accounts, and improving customer relations. Claire helped by organizing the workspace, keeping notes, and encouraging him to keep moving forward. Every small action, every tiny decision, felt like building a foundation. He realized that starting small was not a weakness but a strength. By the end of the month, Daniel had secured 3 more small jobs. Each time, the work was handled with care, attention, and pride. He began to see a pattern. Trust and honesty could open doors that connections and wealth could not. Daniel smiled quietly to himself. He was beginning to feel like he could truly do this. That night, as he and Claire counted the little money they had earned, Daniel realized something important. The first step was not about money, not about fame, not about showing off. It was about believing in himself, taking action, and embracing the small opportunities life offered. That small beginning was the first brick in the wall of their future. He looked at Claire, tired but smiling, and said, "This is just the start." She nodded, her eyes shining. They had no idea how far this small action would take them, but they both knew it was the start of something meaningful, something real, something that could change their lives forever. And so, with the first small step taken, Daniel and Claire felt a renewed sense of hope. The journey ahead was uncertain, full of challenges, but they were ready to face them, together. The path had opened, and the first step had given them the courage to move forward. As Daniel and Claire's little business began to grow, the couple faced a new challenge. The first small clients had brought hope and motivation, but now the demands were bigger. Orders were increasing, deadlines were tighter, and the pressure felt heavier. Daniel woke up every morning feeling the weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. He knew that one mistake could damage the trust they had built. One Monday morning, Daniel received an urgent call from a new client, a medium-sized company that wanted a large supply order delivered within just a few days. The client sounded stern, impatient, and demanding. Daniel's heart raced. "Can we do it?" he asked Claire. She paused, thoughtful, then said, "We will try. Step by step." Daniel knew the challenge was bigger than anything he had faced before. Their tiny office was cluttered, their supplies limited, and they had only one small helper, Joel. Claire and Daniel quickly made a plan. They worked late into the night, packing boxes, checking inventory, and making careful calculations. But despite their best efforts, it became clear that completing this large order on time was almost impossible. The next morning, Daniel tried to delegate tasks to Joel, but the young worker struggled with the heavy workload. Daniel realized he had to step in and do more himself. He drove through the city to collect supplies, carried heavy boxes up the stairs, and coordinated deliveries with meticulous care. Hours passed like minutes, and Daniel felt exhausted, but he refused to give up. Then came another obstacle. Unexpectedly, one of the trucks broke down. The driver called frantically, saying he could not deliver the order on time. Daniel's heart sank. The deadline was only hours away, and the client had been very clear: late delivery would mean losing the contract and damaging their reputation. Claire saw his frustration and gently said, "We can't control everything. We can only do our best." Daniel knew she was right, but that did not make it easier. He borrowed another truck from a neighbor, packed the goods quickly, and personally drove to the client's office. On the way, traffic was heavy, and rain poured from the sky. Water splashed on the windows, blurring his vision. Daniel gripped the steering wheel tightly, reminding himself, "Focus, step by step." He could not let fear control him. Meanwhile, Claire stayed behind, managing phone calls, checking the remaining stock, and guiding Joel. She worked tirelessly, making sure nothing else went wrong. Together, they moved as a team, their energy pushing them forward. Even when exhaustion threatened to take over, their determination kept them going. Finally, after hours of hard work, Daniel arrived at the client's office. He rushed inside, soaked from the rain, and presented the supplies. The client examined the order with a serious face, his eyes scanning every detail. Daniel held his breath. A long moment passed. Then the client nodded slightly, murmuring, "This is good. Thank you." Relief washed over Daniel like a wave. He felt the exhaustion in his muscles, but the pride in his heart was stronger. They had faced a huge challenge and had succeeded. But the challenge did not stop there. That same week, a supplier made a mistake and sent the wrong items. A few days later, another small accident damaged some boxes. Every mistake felt like a mountain to climb, and Daniel worried about failing again. Yet he refused to give in to panic. Instead, he learned from each error, corrected it quickly, and improved the process. He began to understand that challenges were part of growth. They were tests that taught resilience, problem-solving, and patience. Daniel also realized that managing people was a new kind of challenge. Joel was young and enthusiastic but made small errors under pressure. Daniel tried to guide him patiently, explaining tasks, showing methods, and encouraging him to stay calm. Sometimes Joel became frustrated, and Daniel had to remind him, "Mistakes are lessons. Learn, then move forward." Claire also helped, offering support and praise whenever Joel did well. Slowly, Joel grew more confident and capable, proving that even small teams could handle big challenges if they worked together. By the end of the week, Daniel and Claire had completed multiple large orders and resolved numerous unexpected problems. Their tiny office was cluttered, their hands were sore, and sleep had been scarce. Yet they felt stronger than ever. They realized that challenges were not just obstacles. They were opportunities to grow, to learn, and to prove themselves. As they sat quietly at night, drinking tea and reflecting on the week, Daniel said, "This was harder than anything before. But we did it. We survived the storm." Claire smiled, her eyes filled with pride. "Yes," she said. "And next time, we will be stronger, faster, and smarter. Every challenge teaches us something new." Daniel nodded, thinking about the future. Bigger orders would come, more clients, more deadlines, more unexpected problems. But he also knew that they now had the courage, skill, and teamwork to face anything. The first step had opened the door, but these challenges were what would truly prepare them for lasting success. And in that moment, Daniel understood a vital truth. Challenges were not signs to stop. They were signals to rise, to adapt, and to grow. Each obstacle was a stepping stone on the path from struggle to success. With Claire by his side and a determined heart, Daniel knew that no challenge would be too big to face. After weeks of hard work, Daniel and Claire finally felt that their small business was gaining stability. Orders were coming in regularly, clients were satisfied, and the tiny office had begun to feel like a real workspace. Yet, just as hope seemed bright, life reminded them that success was never easy. One Monday morning, Daniel received a call from a longtime client. They had discovered errors in the last delivery. Some supplies were missing, and others were damaged during transport. Daniel's stomach sank. Despite all their efforts, mistakes had happened. The client sounded frustrated and disappointed. "I don't know if we can trust you for future orders," the client said sharply. Daniel apologized sincerely, promising to correct the issue, but he could hear the doubt in their voice. As he hung up the phone, Daniel felt a wave of anxiety. The errors were minor, but the consequences felt enormous. Bills were due, employees needed pay, and the client had been one of their most important. He turned to Claire, who was checking inventory at the desk. Her calm eyes met his, but even she looked worried. "We'll fix it," she said softly. "We always do." Daniel knew she was right, but doubt crept in. He replayed every mistake in his mind. Could he really handle this growing business? Was he capable of managing orders, employees, and clients all at once? The self-doubt was heavy, and for the first time in months, Daniel felt small again. That evening, after hours of repacking the supplies and arranging a rush delivery, Daniel sat in the office alone. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the lights and the occasional beep of his phone. He closed his eyes and remembered the life he had before, the stress of losing a job, the fear of not providing for his family. Back then, everything felt hopeless. Now, after building something real, he felt a familiar fear creeping back. Claire noticed his silence and came to sit beside him. She didn't speak at first. She just placed her hand on his shoulder. "It's okay to feel this way," she finally said. "Mistakes happen. We're learning." Daniel looked at her, grateful, but the weight of responsibility still pressed down. "I'm scared," he admitted. "What if I fail? What if I let everyone down?" Claire squeezed his hand. "Then we fix it. We learn. We don't give up." Her words were comforting, but Daniel knew that comfort alone wouldn't solve the problems. That night, he stayed awake, thinking about every decision, every delivery, every client call. His mind was restless, filled with what-ifs and should-haves. The next day brought more challenges. Another client requested an urgent order, but this time the supplies were delayed due to a supplier mistake. Daniel had no backup plan. He tried to communicate, explain the situation, but the client's frustration was clear. Daniel felt helpless. He had built a system, but it was fragile. One small disruption could cascade into failure. Even Joel, their young employee, made mistakes under pressure. Daniel tried to guide him patiently, but his own doubts made him sharper than usual. Joel noticed the tension and grew anxious, which only made mistakes more likely. Daniel realized that his own fear was spreading, creating stress for the team. He took a deep breath, stepped away for a moment, and reminded himself, fear doesn't solve problems. Action does. Despite the setbacks, Daniel pushed forward. He worked late nights, reorganized orders, and personally handled deliveries. But the sense of uncertainty never fully left him. Every call, every client email, every missed delivery felt like a potential disaster. He began to question whether he had the skills, the patience, or the resilience to continue. Claire, seeing his struggle, encouraged him to focus on progress rather than perfection. She reminded him of how far they had come, from zero resources to a functioning business. "We've faced bigger fears before," she said. "This is just another test. You are stronger than you think." Daniel nodded, but inside, the shadow of doubt lingered. Then came the hardest moment. One of their biggest clients, after repeated delays and minor errors, canceled a large order and ended the partnership. The news hit Daniel like a blow. Months of hard work seemed to vanish in an instant. He felt anger, sadness, frustration, all at once. It was a heavy, quiet pain. That night, he sat in the dark office, staring at the empty shelves, the scattered paperwork, and the small desk that felt suddenly too small for the weight it now carried. For the first time, Daniel considered giving up. He thought about going back to a regular job, about selling the small business, about returning to a life with fewer risks and fewer failures. But then he looked at a photo on his desk, Claire smiling, holding their children, standing beside him. And he remembered why he started. Not just for money, not just for success, but for freedom, dignity, and the ability to provide for his family. The setback was painful, but it also became a turning point. Daniel realized that failure was not the end. It was a teacher. Every mistake, every lost client, every problem highlighted areas that needed improvement. He and Claire could learn, adapt, and grow stronger. He understood that setbacks were part of every journey and that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to keep going despite it. That night, Daniel made a silent promise. He would not let doubt stop him. He would not allow mistakes to define him. Every setback would be a stepping stone toward growth, and every challenge would strengthen their resolve. Together, he and Claire would face whatever came next, learning, adapting, and moving forward, one step at a time. The setbacks hit Daniel hard, but they also sparked a quiet determination inside him. That morning, after the loss of a major client, he woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that failure was not the end. It was an opportunity to learn, adapt, and rise again. Claire noticed the change immediately. "You're ready," she said softly, "ready to take the next step." Daniel nodded, a small spark of hope growing inside him. He began by reviewing every part of the business, every client file, every order, every delivery. Mistakes were highlighted, weaknesses were noted, and plans were drawn. He realized that many of the errors happened because of small oversights in organization and communication. Determined to fix them, he created a checklist system, streamlined processes, and introduced a more structured schedule. Nothing was rushed. Everything had a clear purpose. Daniel also reached out for help. He contacted a former colleague from his supply company who had experience in operations. This friend agreed to mentor him, offering advice on managing clients, planning logistics, and improving efficiency. Daniel listened carefully, asked questions, and applied every tip he received. Slowly, he started to feel that control and confidence could be regained. Meanwhile, Claire played her part brilliantly. She organized files, handled communications, and reached out to previous clients to maintain relationships. She even suggested small marketing efforts, posting updates, offering referrals, and creating flyers to attract new clients. Together, they began to rebuild, step by step, day by day. Joel, their young employee, also grew during this period. Daniel encouraged him to take responsibility for small tasks and gave him the freedom to solve problems. Joel learned quickly, and his confidence grew. He became a key support for Daniel, sharing ideas and helping with deliveries. Their teamwork strengthened, and the energy in the office shifted from fear to hope. The first signs of comeback appeared when a previous client, impressed by Daniel's dedication to correcting mistakes, gave them a small order. Daniel delivered it personally, ensuring every detail was perfect. The client was pleased and even recommended them to a friend. Slowly, new clients began to respond positively to their efforts. Each small success was like a breath of fresh air, reminding Daniel and Claire that persistence and care could pay off. During this time, Daniel also took time to learn new skills. He watched online tutorials about business management, read books about sales and client service, and even practiced speaking more confidently over the phone. Every lesson, no matter how small, became a tool to strengthen their business. He shared what he learned with Claire and Joel, creating a team culture of growth and learning. One particularly challenging week tested them further. A client requested an urgent order, but the supplier sent the wrong products. Daniel calmly contacted the supplier, explained the issue, and arranged a new shipment. Meanwhile, Joel and Claire organized the correct materials and prepared a fast delivery. By the end of the week, the order was delivered on time. Daniel felt a quiet pride. They had faced a serious problem, adapted quickly, and succeeded. The setback from the previous part now felt like a lesson that had prepared them for this moment. Their reputation slowly improved. Clients appreciated the honesty, care, and dedication Daniel and his team displayed. Word spread, and more orders came in. Even small clients, who had once been overlooked, now returned regularly. The business began to stabilize financially, allowing Daniel to pay off debts and ensure that salaries were consistent. But the comeback was not only professional, it was personal too. Daniel noticed that his relationship with Claire grew stronger during this period. Working together in adversity had created a deeper bond. They celebrated small victories, laughed over minor mistakes, and supported each other through every challenge. Their home, once full of worry and tension, now had an atmosphere of hope and warmth. Daniel also reflected on his own growth. He realized that setbacks were not failures. They were opportunities to learn resilience, patience, and strategic thinking. He learned to trust his judgment, take calculated risks, and rely on his team. The man who once doubted every decision was slowly becoming a confident, capable leader. Months passed, and the business started showing real progress. Orders doubled, employees were happier, and clients felt respected and valued. Daniel and Claire began to dream bigger. They planned to expand, to hire more staff, and to create a business that not only delivered products but also delivered respect, trust, and fairness. The comeback had begun not just with recovery but with transformation. One evening, Daniel sat in the office, looking at the new client list and smiling. Claire brought him tea and said, "Look how far we've come." Daniel smiled back, feeling a mixture of pride and gratitude. "It's just the beginning," he said. "We've learned so much. We're ready for whatever comes next." The period of doubt and setbacks was now behind them, replaced by hope, growth, and a renewed sense of purpose. They had faced challenges, but through learning, support, and hard work, they had not only recovered but were stronger than before. Daniel understood that this comeback was a foundation, a platform on which they could build a future full of possibilities. Daniel and Claire's business had grown steadily, but nothing could prepare them for the challenge that came next. One morning, Daniel received an urgent email from a major client. They were expanding operations and needed a massive supply order within just 2 weeks, something that would stretch the small business to its limits. The order was huge, and if they failed, it could damage their reputation permanently. Daniel felt a wave of fear. This was the biggest test of all, a true climax in their journey. He called Claire immediately, and together they examined the details. The quantity was enormous, the deadlines tight, and the requirements precise. Daniel's hands trembled slightly as he calculated the logistics. "We can do it," he said firmly, but even he wasn't entirely sure. Claire looked at him with steady eyes and said, "We've overcome challenges before. We can do this together." Her calm determination inspired him. The first step was to plan every action meticulously. Daniel mapped out deliveries, production schedules, and resource allocation. He called their suppliers, explaining the urgency. Some promised quick shipments, while others could not meet the demand. Daniel had to negotiate, find alternatives, and sometimes drive across the city to pick up supplies himself. Every mistake or delay could mean failure, but he refused to give up. Joel and the rest of the small team were briefed, and Daniel motivated them with a passionate speech. "This is our moment," he said. "It will be hard, it will be exhausting, but we are capable. We have the knowledge, the skill, and the heart. Let's show what we can do." The team responded with energy and dedication. They stayed late, worked tirelessly, and supported each other through every hurdle. One night, just 3 days into the project, disaster struck. A shipment of essential supplies was delayed due to a traffic accident. Daniel felt a surge of panic but quickly took action. He contacted local suppliers, found replacements, and arranged multiple deliveries. He personally drove to pick up crucial items himself, racing against time while Claire managed the office, coordinating employees and tracking tasks. The challenge tested not just their skills but their endurance, patience, and teamwork. The pressure continued to build. Mistakes could no longer be tolerated. Every order had to be checked twice, every delivery timed perfectly. Daniel noticed himself and the team feeling exhausted, stressed, and emotionally drained. Yet, he reminded himself of everything they had overcome, from losing jobs to financial struggles, and knew that this was another step in their journey. He stayed up late every night, monitoring progress and encouraging the team not to lose hope. Claire's role became even more critical. She handled client communication, reassured worried employees, and maintained morale. When Daniel felt despair creeping in, Claire reminded him, "Focus on what you can control, not what you can't. You've done it before, you can do it again." Her words were lifelines during the most difficult moments. In the final days leading up to the deadline, Daniel and his team worked almost nonstop. Mistakes were corrected immediately, unexpected problems were solved creatively, and the office hummed with energy and determination. Daniel felt exhaustion in his bones, but he also felt a strange sense of exhilaration. This was the moment that would define everything. They were rising to the greatest challenge of their lives. Finally, the day of delivery arrived. Trucks were loaded, orders double-checked, and routes planned to the last minute. Daniel personally oversaw the first shipments, ensuring everything reached the client on time. Hours later, he received a call from the client. They were satisfied, more than satisfied, they were impressed. Every order had arrived correctly, on schedule, and in perfect condition. Daniel felt a rush of relief, pride, and accomplishment. They had not just met expectations, they had exceeded them. The climax taught Daniel and his team important lessons. Challenges would always come, some bigger than others, but preparation, teamwork, and perseverance could turn a potentially disastrous situation into a triumph. They learned that fear and uncertainty were part of growth, and confronting them head-on was essential to success. That evening, Daniel sat in his office, exhausted but smiling. Claire brought tea and sat beside him. "We did it," she said softly. Daniel nodded, his heart full. "Yes," he said. "Not just for us, but for everyone who trusted us and believed in us." He thought of Joel, Sarah, Tom, and every worker who had given their all. Their dedication had made the difference. As they reflected on the challenge, Daniel realized this was more than just a business victory. It was a personal triumph, a confirmation that they could face any adversity, endure any pressure, and come out stronger on the other side. The experience had forged them into a resilient, capable, and confident team. Daniel understood that life would continue to bring obstacles, but now he had proof. No matter how enormous the challenge, he had the courage, skills, and support to face it. This climax was the pinnacle of their journey so far, a true test of character, perseverance, and heart. And they had passed it, together. After conquering their biggest challenge, Daniel and Claire finally began to experience the fruits of their hard work. Their company, D&C Supplies, was no longer a small, struggling business. Orders were increasing steadily, clients were happy, and their reputation had grown beyond what they could have imagined. But success for Daniel was not measured in money alone. It was measured in stability, trust, and the sense of purpose that he now carried in his heart. The first sign of their true success came one quiet morning. Daniel was in the office, reviewing new contracts, when Joel walked in, smiling widely. "We've just received a letter from a client," Joel said. "They said you and Claire changed their lives. They called us an inspiration." Daniel felt a lump in his throat. He realized that every late night, every worry, every challenge had been worth it, not for fame, but for the impact they had on others. Claire walked in with their children, and they all sat together. The kids were happy, laughing, and learning about the small victories that had shaped their family's journey. "I never imagined this life," Daniel said quietly, holding Claire's hand. "We've built more than a business. We've built hope, trust, and family strength." Claire smiled and nodded. They both understood that success wasn't just about profit. It was about resilience, love, and staying true to one's values. The lessons they had learned through years of struggle now became guiding principles. Daniel implemented programs in the company to help employees grow not just professionally, but personally. He offered workshops on budgeting, time management, and life skills. Claire organized English and computer classes for staff who had never had the opportunity to learn. Their company became more than a workplace. It became a community, a place where respect, kindness, and teamwork thrived. One day, Daniel visited a local school with Claire and Joel to speak to students about perseverance. Standing in front of the children, he thought back to his early days of struggle, the fear, the uncertainty, the endless doubts. "When I was your age, I faced challenges that seemed impossible," he told the children. "I made mistakes, I was underestimated, and sometimes I wanted to give up. But I learned something important. Never stop believing in yourself. Every step, no matter how small, counts. Every effort matters." The children listened intently, their eyes wide with admiration and hope. As weeks turned into months, D&C Supplies continued to grow, attracting new clients and expanding operations. But Daniel never forgot the people and experiences that had shaped him. He returned to his old neighborhood, visited families struggling to make ends meet, and offered support, advice, and encouragement. He wanted to ensure that others, like him once, could see a path out of despair and toward opportunity. One evening, as Daniel and Claire sat on their balcony overlooking the city lights, Daniel reflected on their journey. He remembered the fear he felt when he lost his job, the exhaustion of building a business from scratch, and the sleepless nights managing challenges. Yet, every hardship had taught them resilience, every failure had built their determination, and every small victory had paved the way for the life they now lived. "We did it," he said softly. Claire squeezed his hand. "No, we did it together. And we will continue to do it together." The ultimate lesson Daniel carried forward was simple but powerful. Success is not just reaching a goal. It is about how you reach it, who you bring along, and the integrity you maintain. He realized that life was full of ups and downs, but each moment, whether joyful or painful, could teach something valuable. By facing challenges with courage, embracing support from loved ones, and never giving up, anyone could transform hardship into achievement. D&C Supplies became a symbol of hope in their community. People admired not just their business, but the culture Daniel and Claire had created. Employees worked with pride, clients returned with gratitude, and the family felt a sense of fulfillment that money alone could never provide. Daniel often told new employees, "Respect builds everything. Work hard, treat people kindly, and never forget your journey." This simple mantra became the cornerstone of their company culture. As the story came full circle, Daniel thought of the young, anxious man who had once walked away from a job, unsure of the future. He smiled, realizing that the boy who felt small, lost, and powerless had grown into a man who could inspire, lead, and create real change. He knew that life would always present challenges, but he now had the experience, the heart, and the mindset to face anything. Finally, Daniel and Claire celebrated a quiet victory with their family. They had endured struggles, setbacks, and uncertainty, yet they had built a life filled with hope, respect, and purpose. They were living proof that resilience, love, and determination could turn despair into triumph. Daniel whispered a final thought to himself. "This story is not just mine. It is for anyone who feels small, overlooked, or defeated. Keep walking. Keep believing. Your moment will come." With their hearts full of gratitude and eyes set on the future, Daniel and Claire embraced the journey ahead, knowing that the greatest success lay not in wealth or fame, but in the lives they touched, the values they upheld, and the hope they inspired. And so, from struggle to success, their story became a lasting testament to perseverance, courage, and the power of never giving up. Daniel lived in a small, quiet town. He was an ordinary man with an ordinary life. He woke up every morning at 5, kissed his wife Claire on the forehead, hugged his 2 children, and left for work. Daniel worked in a supply company. It was big and busy, but he was just a normal worker there. He sat at the same desk every day, typed the same reports, sent the same emails. His life felt routine, predictable, sometimes even lonely. Claire stayed at home with their children. She cooked meals, cleaned the house, helped the kids with school, and managed their small but comfortable home. Daniel admired her silently every day. Her strength kept the family going. Even when she was tired, she always smiled. She never complained, never asked for more than what she had, and always encouraged Daniel. But life was not easy. Daniel's job was demanding. His boss, Mr. Allen, was strict and cold. He never said thank you. He never praised anyone. Daniel always felt invisible. Sometimes people laughed at him quietly behind his back. He never joined their conversations. Every smile around him reminded him of how small he felt. He felt pressure to provide, to work hard, to make enough money to pay rent, bills, and feed his family. Every day was a struggle, every hour a test. Despite all the struggles, Daniel loved his life in small ways. He loved seeing his children laugh. He loved holding Claire's hand at night. He loved the quiet moments when the house was still, and he could think about dreams he had long hidden in his heart. He often imagined a life where he could feel proud, where he could build something for his family, something that mattered. Daniel was smart and careful. He learned the systems at work quickly, noticed details others missed, and completed his tasks with care. But no one noticed. His efforts were unseen. His hard work was routine, and routine went unnoticed. Sometimes, he wondered if he was wasting his life. Was he living for himself or just surviving for others? The thought was heavy, but he kept going, day by day. One morning, Daniel woke up earlier than usual. He looked at the small clock on the wall. 5 o'clock. The sky was dark, and the street outside was quiet. He kissed Claire and the kids softly, careful not to wake them. His shoes were old, with small holes, and his back ached already. But he got dressed, took his worn-out bag and left. He walked to the train station under the cold, gray sky. Each step was heavy, each breath sharp, but he kept going. At the train, he sat by the window, staring at the passing city. Cars moved slowly, people rushed in umbrellas, lights flickered. Daniel thought about bills, about small problems, about the big responsibility of life. He worried about what would happen if he failed, if something went wrong, if he could not provide for his family. The fear was always there, low and heavy, like a shadow he could never shake. At work, he greeted everyone politely. Some ignored him, some smiled faintly, but no one truly noticed him. Mr. Allen, his boss, walked past, frowning. He shouted instructions to other workers, never looked at Daniel. The silence around him was deafening. Daniel did his job well. He completed tasks on time, checked details, and avoided mistakes. Yet, his work never brought recognition. It was just work, and he was just a worker. Yet, Daniel found small joys in life. A smile from his child, a warm meal, a quiet evening with Claire, a small accomplishment at work. These were treasures he held close. He dreamed at night of a better life, one filled with respect, stability, and pride. He imagined standing tall, walking without fear, smiling without hesitation. Those dreams were quiet, small sparks, but they kept him alive, kept him moving, kept him hoping. Life was simple, sometimes too simple. Daniel's clothes were plain, his shoes old, his hands rough from small chores and daily stress. Yet he held his head high inside, believing that maybe one day his life would change. He didn't know when, he didn't know how, but something inside him whispered, "Keep going. Something good is coming. Don't stop now." Daniel loved his family more than anything. Claire's calm strength and his children's laughter were the heart of his world. No matter how heavy life became, he carried their love like a shield. He knew that even if the world ignored him, he could not ignore his family. They were his reason, his light, his anchor. And so, each day, Daniel lived in quiet struggle. He woke up, he worked, he returned home, he loved, he endured. The world might not see him, might not praise him, might not care, but he cared. He fought, not with anger, not with loud words, but with quiet persistence. Daniel's life, ordinary as it seemed, was filled with hidden courage. It was the courage of those who carry responsibility without recognition, who love without expectation, who hope even when hope seems impossible. In the dark mornings and long workdays, Daniel's small dreams whispered to him. And though his life was ordinary, his heart was full of quiet fire. Something inside him knew that this was only the beginning. Life would test him, life would challenge him, but Daniel's journey, though unseen, was already moving toward something greater.